This is the I'm Giving Notice podcast, where you get to take control of life's big three and have the career, relationships, and health that you've always dreamed of. Now, get ready to say, I'm Giving Notice, with your host, Mace Haroff.
Hi, this is Mace Haroff. Welcome to the I'm Giving Notice podcast. In a moment, I'm going to be bringing on Dr. Gabriella Cora, MD. Dr. Cora is a practicing psychiatrist, so you're probably wondering, why do you need to listen to a psychiatrist? I mean, you're not crazy, right? Well, maybe you are. And when I say crazy, I mean that only in a metaphorical way, in that a lot of people who want success in their careers, and we're talking about their jobs, that's all they pay attention to. Yet they'll let their health slide, they'll let their relationships slide. So in this interview, Dr. Cora is going to talk about all three. She's going to speak about it from the context of being a doctor. So you're going to hear a lot of really valuable ideas and concepts and actionable behaviors regarding your health. I hope you'll listen because this is really good stuff. I'm Giving Notice is about taking control of life's big three, and Dr. Cora talks about all three in this interview. And I have a favor to ask of you. If you could, when you're done listening to the podcast, if you could please go to the iTunes page and leave an honest review. I read every one of them, and equally as important, it helps to drive and promote the podcast. So if you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Here we go. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the I'm Giving Notice podcast. This is Mace Haroff, and my guest today is Dr. Gabriella Cora, MD, MBA. Dr. Cora works with people and companies that want to be healthy while they become wealthy. I love that. Dr. Cora is a board-certified psychiatrist, a certified mediator, and she has a master's in health administration and policy. She also focuses on coaching with C-level executives and entrepreneurs to maximize their productivity and performance while maximizing their health and well-being. Dr. Cora, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mace. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
I have to ask you, you're a trained psychiatrist. I don't know many psychiatrists who get into the area of executive coaching and coaching entrepreneurs. So tell me, how did that evolve?
How did that come into play? Well, I was seeing several executives who were leading under pressure and kind of burning out along the way. And I realized that the health premise was not really addressing all their issues, their day-to-day issues of trying to juggle multiple challenges, but at the same time. And that was really when I realized that there was something beyond just the health premise that we had to help out with to make sure that people were well and healthy while they were trying to produce and perform at their very max level.
Very interesting. Now, you are the author of several books. One of those books is entitled Leading Under Pressure, Strategies to Avoid Burnout, Increased Energy, and Improve Well-Being. Burnout is a huge problem. I've experienced it. When people feel burned out at work, they also usually feel burned out in relationships, and they tend to neglect their health. Let's talk about burnout. Number one, what causes it?
Well, what causes it is working through our body as if it were a robot, trying to accomplish more and more while not really taking good care of ourselves. So very successful people are very used to doing more with less. But it gets to the point where just undertaking more and more responsibilities without really having more energy to be able to address all those responsibilities comes to a point where it's the energy we're producing is not enough for the output of that energy that we're giving out. And that's where burnout occurs. So unfortunately, oftentimes there's so many signs and symptoms that we're heading through toward burnout that people either misread or deny, or just don't feel that it is possible for them being very successful to encounter. And that's when I see some people just, start having some problems in terms of not being able to produce at the level that they were producing before. But it usually happens with very successful people who've been doing more and more and more, and who've always been successful at doing more and more and more. So that's where my work started in terms of finding those signs early on so that we could address them and not even get to burnout.
In my previous career, burnout was a big part of why I got out of it. I felt like I was burned out for 15 of the 20 years that I spent out in the field working in that career, and I just denied it. I knew I was burning out. Tell me, what are some of the common symptoms that someone's going to experience when they're experiencing burnout?
So initially, you feel like you're handling things nicely, and you are willing to undertake more and more responsibility. So you're so good at what you do that your boss or in your work situation, people ask you to do more and more. And initially, you feel like you can do it. But then when does it start to take a toll on you? You know, when is it that you realize like, something's going on here that I'm not completely comfortable with. And maybe because you're so responsible, or because you love to take more challenges, or because you like to succeed so much, initially you're like, okay, just give it to me and I'll just juggle it. So when is it that we find out that some problems start to come into play? Well, when people start to feel a bit overwhelmed, like instead of doing 3 things, which they were able to do nicely, now they're doing 4, 5, and 6, and they realize they're not able to complete their tasks, or that they start to keep some things in the back burner and they continue to undertake more and more because they've been so successful at it. And then you see that if you were doing all your work in, let's say, 8 hours, now you need 9, 10, 11, or 12. Or even 13, 14, 15. Or when you realize that your sleep starts to become somewhat choppy and all the stress that you experience during the day, you're bringing into the night. So last thoughts you have before you fall asleep are work related, and first thoughts as soon as you get up are work related too. And then life starts becoming very immersed in work. So everything that you start thinking about is work. And all the problem solving that you need to do around work is very prevalent in every thought that you have through the course of the day. And then you feel like you start needing more energy to be able to accomplish the same things that you were accomplishing before. And usually people start drinking a lot more coffee to gain more of that energy so that they can continue to produce at the same level or more. And then people may realize that now they're having trouble with sleep. So they may not only need some hypnotics or prescribe medications for sleep, or they realize that instead of just taking a nice glass of wine with dinner at night, now they need a couple of additional drinks so that they can knock themselves out and fall asleep. And that continues to bring about a cycle where you need some help to fall asleep, and you need some help to stay awake and have more energy. And that's when I start to see those are the flags. And then suddenly, usually, let's say, a man in his 40s or 50s may just wake up in the middle of the night with what he may feel is a heart attack, and it's actually just a full-blown panic attack that lands him in the ER. And in the ER, people do all the workup, the EKGs are fine, everything seems to be fine, and it's just that the stress level has gone to the heights of no return. It's like something has happened, something has already given in within that person's experience that has placed them in a position of burnout.
You know, what you're talking about it's something that's always amazed me, even though I've been very, very guilty of it. And that is how people put their work first and their health second. So I'm curious, how do you work with organizations and leaders to help them reverse this cycle? In other words, how do you get people to put their health first?
Well, unfortunately, many people bring in their health first when they are faced with the fact that their health has failed, or that there has been a problem. They have experienced either this panic attack in the middle of the night, or they may have had a heart attack or angina in some shape or form, or their high blood pressure has gone up so high that they had severe effects from this, or they started to have problems with being unable to keep a good, weight level, or they may have headaches or other medical issues. So in general, what you see is usually what strikes people is when health is not with them. We take health for granted. So we assume that we'll always be young and healthy. And unfortunately, most of us don't realize until it's late. So it's either our own experience going through that, or a loved one's experience, or a colleague's experience that may, strike home. And we're like, oh my gosh, my colleague, my partner, my employee just had a heart attack at age 40. And it's just because they started overworking, not taking time off on a regular basis. They just started overdoing, and they were almost obsessed with work. And they were, when you look at it retroactively, you're like, oh my gosh, all the flags were there. How could we have missed them? Unfortunately, that's usually what happens. So I love to work with people who are already seeing some of those flags for themselves or for their work situation. And I love to help them reframe what it is that they need to do in a healthy way. And I can do that one-on-one with executives and or sometimes with their whole teams. So usually what I've seen with the whole teams at work, for example, in corporations is, those companies that have studied sleep patterns, for example, of their executives, can usually see that the worst sleep patterns are in their C-level executives. So you will see people with choppy nights, drinking more to be able to sleep a little bit better, more coffee during the day. And you will just see 16-hour days at times. And the first way in which you can take away some hours from, let's say, recreational activities, those are the first to go. And then people end up sleeping less. So we're having a prevalent issue here and a pervasive issue of lack of sleep in people, in which not only do these executives, for example, sleep less during the night, but their sleep, whenever they do have some sleep, is choppy, unless they zonk themselves out with some hypnotics or alcohol, and that's when you have other cycles. So those are some of the things that I love to work with both executives as well as their employees and companies to try to help them in their health and wellness pursuits.
One of the things I want to ask you, I know you work a lot in the corporate world. You work with some incredibly high-level executives at major, Fortune 10 companies. A lot of the listeners on this show are entrepreneurs. They're people who are in corporate jobs right now. They want to go off and have, create their own business. They want to create their own business. They think that the grass is greener. When they're working for themselves, they'll be in full control of everything. But one thing I heard you say a moment ago, you recommend that people take time off, or they're not taking enough time off. You have your own business. I have my own business. When you're in that situation, it's not always easy to take time off. You feel like you can't stop. Is there a solution?
Absolutely, Mace. This is such an important point. The life of the entrepreneur is 24/7 too. And that is why it is so important for us to know ourselves and see what our best skills and capabilities are and how we can put them all together. Some people feel that they're going to have more control as entrepreneurs or independent consultants, when in fact, in hindsight, they may realize they may have had a lot of control over their lives when they were in the corporate world. So this is a huge distinction, and it's a huge decision that people need to make, because like you very well said, the grass always looks greener, when you're on the other side. So that's the first premise that I would say, well, hold on a second, because you can also come with a premise, start with a premise of the fact that if you did not have control in your corporate world, why do you believe that you will have control in your own work? So sometimes we see patterns of behavior, and it's best to think that if you were not able to control it before, it may be hard for you to control it in the future. So you really do want to control it in the present.
So it sounds like you're saying if someone's in a corporate job and they're thinking about venturing out on their own, they really need to learn to take control of the burnout, the things that are burning them out, any issues in their job, in their life before going out on their own. Because if I hear what you're saying it's not going to disappear.
Exactly. These are ingrained patterns of behavior that you're going to need to look into proactively to ensure that you're going to be able to control and manage and master in the future. So why is this so important? If you fell in the trap of feeling that you always needed to do more with less, and if you fell in the trap where you felt that you were indispensable for anything that was going on and that the whole business would not work without you being there, if you really do believe that, as an entrepreneur taking care of your own business, that's going to exacerbate. That's going to just go to the nth degree. That's just going to augment and magnify. So you need to realize how important it is to, I call it, take your mini vacation every single day. If you do not take care of yourself every single day, you're not going to have enough energy by the end of your journey or as you're going through your journey. So the more that you can take good care of your own health, make sure that you have enough time to sleep, to exercise, to relax, and to eat well during the day so that you can endure a long marathon with many sprints along the way. If you're not able to do that on a daily basis, then it's going to be really hard to survive and thrive by the end of the day. So vacations are fantastic, but they're really, artificial, an artificial way of feeling that you're really resting. Unless you can rest every single day, then you're not going to create enough energy. And why is the daily mini vacation so important? It's because our body continues to be a biological organism that has its cycles, and we cycle daily. We don't just cycle during a 2-week vacation period where we have a great time in Italy, or in Europe, sleeping well, relaxing, visiting, eating well, and just walking to have all that exercise within ourselves. So that is why it is so important to try to create some control, master our own biology, master our physiology on a daily basis so that we can think of our busy lives, whether it's as entrepreneurs and or as corporate C-level execs, so we can master our daily lives and just take control over what we need and the level of energy that we need to thrive.
One of the things you said, when people are on vacation, that they get more rest, that they eat better. For most people, I find it to be just the opposite. For example, when I'm on vacation, I feel like I have a week or two if you mentioned Italy. When I was in Italy, I said, I've got a week in Italy. I want to see everything I can. So I went without sleep. And also, I went crazy eating. I said, I'm in Italy. This is not the time to watch my diet. I'm going nuts. So there's finding that balance, whether you're at work or whether you're on vacation. It seems like if you abuse yourself at work, you're going to abuse yourself on vacation. Would that be true?
Well, in general, it depends on what is important to you. One of the interesting things, for example, about visiting Italy and overeating is that you may have been walking all day long also. So, for example, what we bring in as energy that we need, for our physiology to work nicely depends on what comes in, input and output. So when you're walking all day while on vacation, you may need to eat some more. And that is okay. The problem is if you're in a sedentary situation, working all day with a lot of stress and sitting down, you will need a greater output of physical energy to be able to counterbalance the stress and the sedentary lifestyle that you're bringing in. So if you overeat, then that's when most people start gaining some weight. So I know you well, I've always seen you with great weight, but that's not the case with very many other people. They may either lose weight because they don't eat well during a very busy day. But what I usually see the most is people then struggle having a good weight situation because they start eating junk food or just having one meal a day, with a lot of sedentary lifestyles, or, they may have very strenuous exercise a couple of times a week instead of just trying to find a good flow on a daily basis with a bit more intensity at other times. So in general, that's the pattern that I used to see.
Yeah, I think about cruises. Have you ever gone on a cruise? Like a
yes,
cruise?
yes.
Have you ever watched people eat on a cruise?
Yes.
It is absolutely amazing. But anyway, we could talk about food and eating habits on vacations forever. I want to talk about something else that busy professionals tend to do. When they put their work first, not only does their health suffer, but often their relationships suffer as well. How can people do a better job balancing their professional life with the important relationships that they have? In other words, their spouse, a significant other, a life partner, their children, and anyone else who's important to them. How can they do that?
Well, we all prioritize what's important in our life at different stages. And usually it's because of life circumstances that just hit us in the face. Some of those are more obvious than others, but by the end of the day, we usually make decisions based on that. The only issue that comes to mind when people become almost obsessed with work is that they become hyper-focused in everything that they do at work, and that becomes the central part of their life. And how would you notice that other things are failing? Well, let's say that your spouse starts creating her or his life separate from yours because you get to be so busy that you stop doing things together. So those would be some flags to think about. The other flags that are quite interesting and sad to see is when the kids, that happens to the teenagers, let's say, the teenagers start becoming so busy in their own lives that they don't even think about connecting or contacting their parents. And the only time that they would approach you is for money to buy something new. So those are some of the flags that I usually see. And oftentimes working with executives, that's what they tell me. They realize that, they may have been married for 20 years, but over the past 10 years, they may have had a totally separate life from their significant other. So it kind of comes to a time in which that spouse starts planning vacation with their own friends, and they don't even count on you because you're not around. Same thing with the kids. Something that's very important for our family health and wellness is to have dinner together as a family. So when one of the spouses is just so busy with work that they cannot come in and have dinner with the kids, for example, the kids get used to the parent not being around, and it will get to the point where they're going to say, I'm just going to, go to a fast food place and just have dinner with my friends today, because it's like, why would I even worry about having dinner with you? You're not around. So sometimes what happens is that disconnection, that disconnect comes into play. And unfortunately, many people don't realize about that until it's a bit late. And what is really even sadder about this situation is that most people who start working hard because they want to provide for their families. They want the best for their families. They want to give them whatever they didn't have while they were growing up. So there is a point in which they lose track of that initial intention, of that initial purpose of why they started to work so hard. So if we can help them realign with that and say, well, hold on a second. If you get your energy from being around the people that you love and now you're missing that, let's try to see how you can go back to reestablishing that connection. And hopefully it won't be so late. It won't be too late, and the late means your family members started creating a life of their own without you around because you were not around.
Dr. Cora, you've mentioned energy a couple of times here. When we were talking about burnout, you mentioned that it's important for people to keep their energy up. Right now, talking about relationships, you said that people oftentimes don't have the energy to put into their families. So I have to ask you, How can busy professionals, busy entrepreneurs, how do they maintain their energy levels? What do you advise when people are working 18-hour days?
Well, I usually refer to the 4 pillars of health. And to me, those are the greatest of ways to create energy from a biological perspective. So the one biological way of creating the most energy is through exercise. Exercise allows you to create great oxygenation for your whole body. So it helps your heart health, your brain health, and your full body health. And it's a very positive way of being able to raise that energy to great levels. So, for example, one of the things I usually say is when people get busier, they should exercise more than before because now they have higher stressful levels. And the best way to counteract that is through exercise. So exercise is one of the most important ones. Eating well is also super important. Nowadays, I see many people buying more vitamins, for example, and spending, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars buying vitamins instead of really eating good food on a regular basis. We need those cycles. So a great breakfast to begin the day, maybe, a great lunch, maybe a snack along the way, and a lighter dinner would work depending on each one of our lifestyles. So exercise, eating well, relaxation becomes the 3rd pillar. It's so important to be able to create times in which we can rest our minds and our body throughout the course of the day. If we have a 12-hour day, there may be a couple of times during the day where we just need, a 15-minute break. I call it a power break, so that you can just refresh your mind, allow yourself not to feel obsessed with whatever you're doing. Just lighten up your thoughts. Maybe not think about anything. Listen to music for about 15 minutes. So relaxation techniques are super important in the life of the busy executive or employee. And the last part that people often, just don't take much care of is sleep. If we don't sleep well on a regular basis, we're not going to be able to refresh our minds for the next day. So if we carry all the stress that we experience during the day to our nighttime, we're not going to be able to sleep well. And if we can't refresh our brains, then we're going to carry over all that stress to the next day as well. So those are the 4 pillars: exercise, eating well, relax on a regular basis, and make sure that you can sleep well so that you can bounce back the next day.
I wish we had time to delve into all of them, but there's one in particular I want to ask you about: exercise. Many people, their idea of exercise is that it has to be something that's strenuous, that it's prolonged. In other words, I have to join a gym, I have to lift weights for an hour, or if you're going to go out and get some cardio exercise, well, I've got to go out and run 10 miles, and people think they don't have time to do it. In your opinion, as a physician, what are acceptable levels of exercise that are doable, yet people are going to benefit physiologically from doing it?
So if we want to have an inexpensive way of exercising, we could just have a brisk walk for 30 minutes. That's actually what's recommended through the American Medical Association. So basically just have that 30 minutes a day. The problem that I found is that for very busy execs or for very busy people, that's really not enough. So 30 minutes of just a brisk walk won't counteract all the stress that you may experience during the day. So my preference is for people to go more into maybe either running or swimming or any kind of repetitive exercise that can sometimes be experienced as boring, will bring that relaxing feeling to your body. And what I would also suggest is if you are super busy, then consider not only the half hour, but you may want to extend that to a full hour. Now, sometimes people ask me, well, is it the same if I do, 3 10-minute sessions of some of these? And I would say no, because in general, it takes you a good 15 to 20 minutes to get into the zone. And once you get into the zone, it's not just getting into it that is healthy in one way. You need to stay in that zone for a while to experience its best effects. So what usually happens is if it takes you, let's say, 20 minutes to do that, then you want to stay there for a good 15 minutes. And that's where you will start saying, well, is it 30 minutes to an hour? It depends on your degree of stress at work. And so I would usually recommend at least 30 minutes to an hour on a daily basis for very busy people. And how do you make it work? Well, you have to try to see how you can bring it into your busy lifestyle. And if you realize that it's not just a sprint that you're running, you're really in a marathon with occasional sprints. And so then you need to try to create that stamina that will help you stay healthy in the long run.
I love the advice that you just gave, that the busier you are, the more you need to exercise. So the less time you have for exercise, there's an inverse relationship.
Yes.
The more that is fascinating. And I always look at exercise. Listen, I got to tell you, first of all, I don't really enjoy exercise. I do it because I look at it almost like a drug that a doctor prescribed for me. If I want to be healthy, if I want to get better, you need to take this. I look at exercise the same way. To me, it's not an option. And getting people to look at it that way is very, very difficult because they don't enjoy it. Listen, we don't have a lot of time left. There's a question I want to ask you. People who listen to the I'm Giving Notice podcast, as I said earlier, are often entrepreneurs who have their own business or they want to. What advice would you give to new entrepreneurs who are entering this unknown area of their life or their business? They're wondering if it's going to work. They're wondering if they're going to be able to survive. It creates a lot of doubt and a lot of stress. What should these people do to be able to maintain their productivity and sleep at night?
I would advise to first have a plan of how it is that they're going to be healthy and well while they produce their wealth. So go into your entrepreneurial venture with a good idea of who you are and what makes you healthy and happy. And don't just expect that you're going to be healthy and happy along the way after you start the venture. So start off your venture with the idea of what it is, with the strategies, the tactics, the actions that you're going to undertake to make sure that not only your venture succeeds from a financial and entrepreneurial perspective, but also what are you going to do to make sure that you can endure even more stress or more work than when you were working in the corporate world. That's the part that I would believe is very important. And what's most important is all the strategies that you want to undertake, start them today. Don't say, oh, when I start my venture, I will start exercising better and eating better. You know what? It's not going to happen unless you make it happen today. The other thing that is extremely important is even if you have an amazing idea for your venture for the future and you want to bring that about to help your family and make sure that you can bring your legacy to your family later on, make sure that you are ready to connect with your family today. If you don't have a good relationship with your spouse today, or if you say, oh, honey, I can't take care of you because I have to take care of the new business, well, guess what? You're going to get only busier along the way. So you want to ensure that you're creating the relationship with your loved ones today so that you will succeed in the future. You cannot leave it as a future goal. You have to make it happen today.
That is great advice, as always. Do you have time for one more question?
Absolutely.
Because there's something in your tagline made me very, very curious. Your tagline that you work with companies and people who want to be healthy as well as wealthy. Obviously, you're very good. You have tremendous expertise at helping them to be healthier. How do you help them to become wealthier? That's what I also want to know.
In general, what I've found in working with people is that by the end of the day, when we work together, they can improve their performance and productivity by 25%. So oftentimes people feel like they need to work 16-hour days to produce more. And what I usually help people do is work less, but more efficiently. And what I've always seen, they end up working 25% less of the time that they started working on before they start working with me, and they start to produce 25% more. And it's paradoxical. They're like, I can't believe it. You know, I couldn't expect, I would not have expected that I would have produced more by working less. And when you first said that, I thought it was a joke, but that's what usually happens. And that's why I've always found people start becoming wealthier when they work in a savvier way, in a more efficient way, and when they start looking into how they produce their energy and how they direct, how they focus their energy very wisely, instead of just shooting everywhere and feeling like, of course, they're going to shoot at the right target every once in a while. But what if you just had one missile you had to use? Wouldn't you use that one wisely?
Absolutely.
So that's where the 100% of increased, whether it's productivity or wealth creation, that's where it comes into play. You may have 100 missiles, but if you have one target, if you have 100 missiles to spare and you have just one target, you will probably hit the target. But what if you had just one or two or three missiles and you did have that urgency to hit the target? So that's where you can see the productivity or performance in a very bullseye way and very targeted.
And you live it yourself, so it's something you do every day. It's easy for you to help your clients to do that, and you've been doing it for a very long time. Dr. Cora, I often find that I can tell a lot about someone by their favorite quote. What's yours?
My favorite quote is Somerset Maugham's, if you don't settle for anything but the best, you'll very often get it.
Wow. That will be up on the show notes page for sure. And is there a book, one book that's had a tremendous impact on your life that you like to share with others?
One of my favorite books that really changed my mindset into focusing more in the entrepreneurial world is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber.
Excellent. Well, I will have these resources listed on the show notes page, and I will also have listed how people can get in touch with you, where they can get the books that you've written. But let me ask you right now, if someone wants more information about Dr. Gabriella Cora, or they'd like to get in touch with you, where can they go?
Visit my website, drgabycora.com.
Could you spell that, please?
drgabycora.com.
And I've been to your website. You got a beautiful website and a great picture of you there in a nice, bright red jacket. I like the color red. I love to see women in red. I don't know. Maybe it goes back to, what was that book that talked about red back during the French Revolution? Tale of Two Cities. Remember the red? Maybe I'm from there. Maybe that's part of one of my incarnations. Dr. Cora, you've given us such valuable information today. I really appreciate you being on the show. Actionable ideas. Are they easy to implement? No, but I know if the listeners make small steps and make an effort, it can make a dramatic difference in their life, in their job performance, and in their overall happiness, and especially their career, their relationships, and their health. Thank you so much for being on the I'm Giving Notice podcast today.
Thank you, Mace. It's a pleasure chatting with you.
All right. And for everyone who's listening, I hope you will take Dr. Cora's advice seriously, because it will make a dramatic difference in your life. Until we speak again, this is Mace Horoff for the I'm Giving Notice podcast. I'll talk to you soon.
This has been the I'm Giving Notice podcast with Mace Horoff. For show notes and more information about how you can take control of life's big three, please visit www.imgivingnotice.com.